Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Indie Scene here on IndieRockRadio.ca. This is a special series that we're doing called the Producer Series, and we're going to be interviewing several different producers and getting their perspective on past recordings and future recordings and what the industry is looking for now. Pretty much a question period. Tonight, we are starting off everything with an amazing guest, someone who's been in the industry for quite a long time, and basically is a legend as far as I'm concerned. This gentleman has been with many different top acts. He is pretty much the guy who's created most of the sounds that we've heard since the early 80s. All the way and up, and even part of the 70s. The man behind Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, the man behind Metallica, Injustice for All, and many others. Korn, and of course, is a 9-time Grammy Award winner, and we're very pleased to have him on the show tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Here is Steve Thompson. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hey, Phil. A little fried right now, but all's good.
Yeah, well, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here once again. It's always a blast to have you on the show. As I was saying earlier, whatever, now you've worked with a lot of amazing top acts, but I wanted to go back to the beginning. I want you to tell the people how everything started, because I think it's really cool how you came from a club DJ and became one of the best producers on the East Coast. So let's know a little bit about that background.
Well, I started working in record stores and actually got forced into DJing.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out well. So I started working a lot of clubs in New York during the 70s.
Yep.
And then I got an opportunity to work on dance remixes, which was new at the time.
Yep.
Became very successful in that. And then the turn of the 80s, I started working on a lot of different genres of music.
Mm-hmm.
From Cameo, Barcade, Stephanie Mills, to Talk to David Bowie, to Missing Persons, Psychedelic Furs, to pop artists like Whitney Houston, Madonna, Aretha Franklin, and then obviously the rock stuff happened in the mid 80s.
That's it, eh? But basically, when you started working as a producer, record labels or whatever, how did this work? Was it like David Geffen came into like club one night, heard your stuff, and said, "I really like the way this guy mixes"? How did that story work out? How did you get in there?
Well, the rock scene is different. When I was doing dance music, I got noticed by the DJ community and the record companies that promoted dance music. And that's how that started. And I was kind of green in the studio, so I was searching for engineers, and I wound up working with Michael Barbiero. To me, he's one of the best engineers in the world, and I basically learned my engineering craft from Michael. He was amazing. I mean, he came from the same school as Bob Clearmountain, Michael Brower, and just so many other people. So I was very fortunate, but my criteria for picking the right engineer is, I said, Michael, I don't want to work on the same music. I want to be different because my taste is very varied, from classical to heavy metal. And I want to find somebody who's able to make that transition. And Michael was the perfect guy, so I was very fortunate with that.
Yeah, it's true. You know that a lot of producers nowadays or whatever, they can stick with like one type of music and they're really good at it, but it's very rare that you see a producer who can, spread his wings and go into different genres of music like that. Is it just something I guess you were born with, or is it something that's a skill that's honed?
Well, I was born with it. Yeah, I was born with it because I've always liked a lot of variety of music. I mean, in the 70s, I could be listening to Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Al Green, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Pink Floyd. I mean, there was no boundary there. And I loved it all. And I felt that I understood the music well enough to be able to work in every genre and do it well. I mean, I would never take on anything that I knew I couldn't better what everybody else is doing. That was my criteria.
Mm-hmm. That's it, So of course, it's weird. Somebody had posted, I think, on your site, it said 7-time Grammy Award winner, but when I counted them, there was 9 of them. So do you even know how many Grammys you have? Is it 9 or is it 7?
I think it was 7.
Yeah.
I don't really pay attention anymore because it is what it is, and it's basically decorations. I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but to me, the biggest gift is for the music I work on to be able to relate to people and feel good about what I've worked on. Okay. And again, I'm the background guy. It's all about the artists I work with. I've been very fortunate to work with the best artists in the world, and hopefully able to contribute what they do and better their game. That's all I could do.
Yeah, that's it. So look, I want to go back to a couple of things. For example, of course, you have a strong affiliation with the legendary Clive Davis. Tell me about the first time you met Clive, and what was it that he brought to you? Was it the Whitney Houston project that was the first thing you worked on, or?
Actually, I believe Jerry Griffin and Ed Eckstein were very responsible for me getting to work with Whitney.
Okay.
And obviously, they recommended me through Clive. And so I'm trying to think. I don't know if that was the first project. I think I might have worked with Aretha Franklin before that. I'm not sure. Yeah. But anyway, I remember the story that I went in to redo the song, which Narada Michael Walden produced, which I thought did an amazing job. And I wound up bringing musicians in to enhance the production and just make it a little more interesting. And I'll never forget I'm not sure if it was Ed Eckstein or Jerry Griffin said, "Hey, when you play this for Clive, don't feel bad if he rejects it and wants you to go back and redo it again. That's just what Clive does."
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't think there's going to be a problem there. So I sat down with Clive. He played the song on 11 and was absolutely blown away, didn't want to touch anything, which the A&R people were flabbergasted that they had no clue that he would just let it go as it was.
Yeah.
So I built a relationship with Clive, and what I love about Clive is he's a song person. He puts the best songwriters together for the artists he works with, and there was nobody better for pop music than Clive. And their promotion staff and their pop music staff was second to none. I mean, Clyde had the whole motor running. It was almost like if you look at the story of Motown, when you see Berry Gordy will sit in with his whole staff, play a song, and say, "Would you buy a sandwich or buy this song?" And that said it all. And the staff would, and I just love that, to see the story of Motown and how the whole staff, from Smokey Robinson to Norman Whitfield and the Funk Brothers? Funk Brothers. They had it down. Yeah. And see that strong family just do what they did just absolutely blew me away. And that was very similar to Clive, because when Clive gets a song he's happy with, he'll sit his staff down in a meeting and basically say, "Okay, this is what we're going to do," and he wants everybody's reaction. So I kind of like that. That was kind of cool to sit in those meetings. The only thing about Clive is, and again, I'm a person that plays music loud. He's got me topped, because at the time he would play cassette, and when we rewound the cassette, it would run through the heads, and he's still having an 11. It was like screech on a blackboard. My ears were killing me. It was hysterical. But what I loved about Clive, he is so in tune to great songs and great music, and you can't ask for anything more than that. I love him. Love
Definitely. Him. Well, I just prior to this interview or whatever, just like everybody else, have been stuck at home doing the COVID thing, and I had watched Clive's movie that they have on Netflix. It's a historical rundown, a biography of him and stuff. And it was funny how you touched on that part. It was like for Clive to like it, because there was one where literally Clive said, I forget which song it was in the thing, and he says, "It's done, it's good." But he said, no, there's more. And so they go back. He sends it back to the engineer, and the engineer adds all this stuff and fixes. Oh, yeah, it was David Foster or something who had done this song. And David Foster, he goes back and he fixes up the drums. He, puts adds in this and stuff and everything. And he said, no, it was the Whitney Houston, the other track that she was known for, which was the old Dolly Parton track.
I Always Love You.
Always Love You, right?
Well,
And
I'll give you a story about that after you finish your thing.
Yeah, no problem. So Foster goes and touches it. Clive says it's fine the way it is, right? Foster goes back, fixes it all up, dolls it up, and then sends it back to Clive. And Clive says, no, I told you it was the way it is. Take all that shit out, right? So all of a sudden, Foster just loses it on the phone, probably cussed every single name in the book, according to Clive, right? And then Clive just calmly said to him after, okay, let's just get off the phone right now before one of us says something we really don't want to say. And that's it. And he hung up the phone on Foster. And Foster remembers that to this date. He says, I really felt bad about cussing, but it was all about artistic integrity at that point. But Clive knows what he's doing. Yeah.
I'll give you a story about Whitney on that song, I'll Always Love You.
Yeah.
I remember sitting talking to Clive probably about 8 months or earlier before Bodyguard was done.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Clive, it'd be great with Whitney if we strip down the production of her songs and be more about her voice and minimalize the production.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, with the song I'll Always Love You and everything like that, where she could really shine.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, because, a lot of Whitney's productions were high gloss, big productions, which is not bad, but I felt she needed to get back to that. So probably about 6 to 8 months after that, Clive calls me in the office and plays me The Bodyguard. And I said, I want credit on this because that's exactly where she needed to be at that point. I'm sorry, the song was How Will I Know? And I Was Always Love You was The Bodyguard. And what was the ballad she'd say? Oh, Saving All My Love for You, which happens to be my wedding song. In fact, I was trying to get Whitney to sing at my wedding. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame what happened to her, of course, too.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a blessed soul of woman with an amazing voice, and tragic loss, even for Clive. I know Clive, according to what I've seen, he was very, very close. Probably the one musician out of all he's worked with or whatever that he was very close to.
Well, with her and Aretha too. Don't forget Aretha.
Also, yeah, of course.
It was interesting. I worked with Cissy Houston, Whitney's mother, in the late '70s on a dance song.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, my partner Michael Barbiero actually recorded the vocals on "Saving All My Love for You."
Mm-hmm.
So that was before we did "I Want to Dance with Somebody." So there's a little bit of history there.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Well, by the way, I'm posting up. We're having comments that are being left on our Facebook and YouTube page. So I'm putting them up. So Karen S. Thompson says, an unbelievably talented man.
Thank you, Karen.
And Michael Tressa. So electric. Steve created the sound for over 2 decades.
Well, thank you, Michael. Let's go Mets.
There we go. So I guess you know these people, huh?
Yeah.
It's so cool. Social media really has changed a lot. Back in the day, you had the music industry and it was separated from anything that was public. And now with social media and all this stuff going on, it's really great that we're able to communicate with the people in the industry and learn a lot more in depth of what goes on behind the scenes. One of the next interviews I'm going to be doing is Rob Halford, of course, and he has come out with a whole new book and everything. And
actually, I saw the book, and when you talk to Rob, tell him I said hello and tell him I love him.
For sure, man. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. Because I've always been a big fan of theirs for many years. And stuff.
Same here. And tell Rob I'm going to buy the book, but the autographed version on Premiere things.
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm at now, Steve. I'm waiting for the mail to come in. They're sending me the book. I got to read a book. Last time I read a book was when Michael Jackson passed away. There was an author who wrote a biography on him, which I thought was really good. It's also the guy who wrote the book on Kurt Cobain's death. And I read this novel, and I was just really happy to read it because it was not a guy who was going after him, because we know the industry, you know, like there's always all types of people trying to get at these. The bigger you are, the more people are trying to get at you. And he wrote an honest book or whatever, said, look, I, like everybody else, I tried to come in here and find the smoking gun or whatever on what people say about him, but found out that there was a whole different story behind the man.
Well, I'll give you a story about Kurt Cobain, because my wife is from Seattle, and I went to Seattle a lot in the early 90s and experienced the so-called grunge era, which I actually got to work with Soundgarden, which I never thought was grunge to begin with. But I met Kurt, and actually my brother-in-law was working on Kurt's house when he died, which was sad. And as far as Michael Jackson, I came this close to working with Michael. And I would have loved to, because that man was so, I mean, the closest thing we have to Michael Jackson right now is probably Bruno Mars. But, you know, as Michael, I don't care what people say about him, was so talented. I mean, it was so sad. A voice from God. So sad to see how he went, how he was sheltered, and the trials and tribulations of growing up. And I just feel bad about Michael. And in fact, it was interesting. A good friend of mine, Ronald Luxembourg, signed the Jacksons away from Motown. Ronald Luxembourg worked for Epic Sony at the time. But yeah, it's sad. I mean, you know, a lot of people complain there's bad music today, and I have to say I disagree. It's you have to just have to look for it. You know, to me, every generation has their style of music, and it's usually the older generation before will say it sucks. And I totally disagree. I mean, believe me, I was very fortunate to grow up in the era I did and experience Motown, the Phil Spector sound, from the Beatles to the Stones to Zeppelin, Bowie. Bowie was probably my biggest influence. But there's a lot of good bands today. I mean, the Struts are a great band. I mean, there's a lot of great music out there. You just have to search for it. And for the people who think it sucks, well, maybe it's just not your generation.
Yeah, that's it. I hear you. Going back onto the Michael thing, I remember watching the funeral when it happened, and Smokey Robinson got up on stage and just blew me away. I went and researched it after, and he was talking about a song that Michael did that was once his. He never made a big hit of this song, and I heard his version, and I could see why it wasn't really, you know, like great production or whatever. But when Michael saw it and he sang it, I think he was only like 10 years old or 11 years old at the time. And Smokey said, it was a song about heart loss and, you know, like heartbreak and so on. And he couldn't believe that a child at that age could understand the heartbreak, because, you know, you put your emotions into a song to make people believe it. And the way he did that song or whatever, he literally felt, you know, like he made people truly believe at 11 years old that his heart had been ripped apart by this girl and all that stuff. And I thought that was just amazing. For somebody to have that type of talent is definitely, you can call him king of pop for sure.
Smokey was a huge influence in Motown. Yeah. And did Smokey write My Girl?
Yeah. Nope. I don't think he wrote My Girl. Or sure? Maybe he did. Yeah, I think he did. Wait, no. I gotta
look that up, because the Temptations were probably one of my favorite bands of all time. David Ruffin, probably one of my favorite singers of all time, with Eddie Kendricks. To me, they just give me goosebumps when I hear them sing. And I think Smokey might have written My Girl. I'll have to look it up. But I mean, just that whole thing. I mean, I really respected what Motown did in the 60s. I love that. And then in the 70s, you had Philly International with Gamble and Huff, and the Philly sound kind of did what Motown did, but made it more dance oriented. And I thought that was really cool too.
For sure. Anyways, moving on from that point. So yeah, like I said, what blew me away when I first met you and I started researching you and stuff, and I was going, I grew up. Look, I'm going to be 54 next month, and I grew up in the 70s, the 80s, and so on. And I music has always been my release type of thing. Tried my hand at musical instruments and all kinds of stuff, but never had the talent that half of these people have, right? And so my way was to express myself through being a radio announcer. Like, if you can't You beat them, join them. You know. So as I put that together, as I fell in love with a lot of different types of music and things. Along the way, of course, the '70s were all about these long prog type of songs with these long lyrics. Like, of course, I was into Rush when I was younger, and so on, and King Crimson and all these type of bands. But then when I remember when GNR came out with Appetite for Destruction, I just was blown away at pretty much how every single track on that album almost was just, it had it. You could put it on radio airplay anywhere, half of, if not the full album. And of course, tell me what, bring us back to that moment or whatever when, I guess it was Geffen who said, "Look, I got this new band for you." And
it's not Geffen. You have to understand.
Yeah.
Teresa Enzenot and Tom Zutz had signed Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And I was producing Tesla's first record at the time.
Okay. Yes.
While I was doing that record, Mechanical Resonance, Tom Zutz had started feeding me Guns N' Roses demos. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away. They even had November Rain on a stripped down version, I think, with Axl playing the piano, which is an amazing song. Mm-hmm. And they started sending me demos, and we were doing like 3 projects at once. And they wanted me right after I finished that to go right into Guns N' Roses and produce it. And I wanted to, but to tell you the truth, we was so burnt. And my feeling is when I do a record, I got to be 1,000% there. If I'm not 1,000% there, what's the point? Yeah. So we told Zoot, I said, why don't you find somebody to produce it and we'll mix it for you. Mm-hmm. I was blown away. And we mixed it in New York at Media Sound. And Axl, Izzy, and Slash were in the studio. We did some touch-up production work and then mix it there. And the cool part about mixing, let's talk about old school, we mixed it on a Neve 8068, no computer and all manual, hands-on mixing, which I loved. And it was tape, all tape, And there's something to say about that because, we talk about new school and old school. Mm-hmm. I am so glad I learned old school because applying old school and new school is so much easier for me because I've always embraced technology and always look for the next thing. That's what we do in the music industry. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't want to sacrifice sound in the process. Mm-hmm. It's not what I do. Yeah. But saying that, you look at the 70s, you talk about prog rock like Yes. Yeah. And all these bands. And it was kind of funny. When I do music, I kind of want to figure out, well, what kind of drugs are kids doing today? In the 70s, it was more like probably weed and whatever. Yeah. And they want to get deep into lyrics. Yeah. Today, you better don't bore me, get to the chorus. And
no. Nowadays, you got that track, like it was the one, I Can't Feel My Face, that's, where older guys like me are going like, oh, yeah. Like what's happening to the music industry.
Look at Cardi B and talk about it, and number one hit, which again, it's funny because I think people's attention spans today are pretty quick, and you better hit them in 20 seconds or they're gone.
Yeah, that's it. While we're talking about that's pretty funny. There was one prior to before I met you, I was working at a top 40 radio station in Montreal, and I was blown away with how censorship works. It's hilarious because they were censoring Eminem and beeping out everything he was doing. But meanwhile, they were playing another track where the guy says, "Come sit on my face and let me eat my way to your heart." So how is that track okay? But whatever Eminem says is like totally out of it, So yeah, the whole censorship thing's another subject altogether. But going back into it, Steve, you were touched a little bit, and that's a subject I wanted to touch on, is what is the difference nowadays? Because, like when I look at the recording production, of course, everything back in the day was analog before digital came along and all that stuff. And there were some amazing, amazing sounds made. Like when you look at Dreamboat Annie, for example, from Heart. Listen to Magic Man or whatever, and the guitar riff, the keyboards and stuff. It was just also like I was blown away by that production back then. But nowadays, everything is just a click of a button type of thing. But as you were saying, and I loved what you just said about that, is that even if you were able to simply just click a button and stuff, it still doesn't give you that sound and that feel that you want in the song, right? So what's your views on all that?
Well, again, going from old school to new school, which
Mhm.
again, I'm still 16. I love working with new artists. Back in the day, it was a different process. First of
Yeah.
all, you had record companies that had A&R people.
Yeah.
And A&R people would babysit the bands and get them to where they need to be where the demos are presentable. Then once the producer gets the demos, it's your job to get the best arrangement, the best performance, the best everything out of the band and do your thing.
Mhm.
And what I like to do is if I'm working, like, say, with a rock and roll band, there's a lot of philosophies. Some people like say, okay, let's get a click track, record the drums, and layer everything up. And I'm not that way. I want to get a performance. I don't want to get a band to sound like a band. So I don't care if we have to redo things, but I want the whole band in there and the singer performing in the song. I mean, there's a great example when I was working with Korn on Follow the Leader.
Yeah.
I would do that, and Jonathan would sing. And I remember when I think we were doing Freak on a Leash at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, when Jonathan walked in the studio, I said, okay, I don't want you to bring a lyric sheet in. I want you to memorize the lyrics, and I want to get the emotion of what these lyrics mean to you. And I don't care if it's on key or whatever like that. I want people to believe what you're feeling of this song. And I'll never forget the performance he did, which absolutely blew me away. At the end of the performance, he literally passed out. He put everything in that. That's all I can ask for. There's a difference when a singer goes from a reading to closing their eyes and performing a song. Singers are almost like actors. How good I remember, who was it? Trying to think of the director who said, "You want to be a great actor? Be you." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I forgot who said that. I'm not sure if it was Orson. No, not Orson Welles, but I don't know, it was Stanley Kubrick or, Jack Nicholson, who I knew. The great thing about Jack, he wasn't acting. That's him.
I know. That's what it's funny that you touch on it, because you look at a lot of actors nowadays. Sure, they're playing a different character in movies, but they're themselves. Like, look at Jennifer Aniston. Pretty much same person in all of her movies, or same. It's all their own personality. Just they believe they're another person. I guess that's living out how they would do it. Yeah. So. Yeah.
But as far as recording goes, so back in the day.
Yeah.
I would get the band in. We would do pre-production where we go over the songs, work on the arrangements, this and that. If there needs to be lyric touch-ups, we would do them. But, my big thing is before I press the record button, I want everybody to feel good about the song, and we have it in a good place. So when you go in the studio, it's still fresh.
Yeah.
But you can get that essence of the song with 1, 2, or 3 takes, and then build from there. It's like movies. You hear about movie producers that feel like they need 500 to 1,000 takes, when usually if you do the right pre-production, take 1, 2, or 3 is the shit.
Yeah.
And that's how I tend to work with my artists. I want them, like, with this new band I work with, I spent 6 months online with them. A band from Prague, who the English is not good. And I wrote the songs. My friend Damian Valentine and the band wrote them and directed them for 6 months before I went in the studio in Nashville and recorded them. In fact, I'll play you a little bit. This is a song called Revolution.
Okay.
That I wrote. I felt I wanted to, like, do something a little different with rock, a little dance edge to it, but still rocking. I'll play you a little bit of it.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I love it whenever you play me new stuff.
Is that volume okay?
Yeah. I think we woke up the neighbors, man.
There's words I'm letting it happen. A paid off by corporations, they don't care. There's words I'm letting it happen. A paid off by corporations, they don't care. A big money polluting our emotions. Trying to divert our attention. We need your action, not your words. We need your action, not your words.
It's wild. When you listen to that track, it's like you see the swarms of audience and stuff just like moshing and just the electric lights and the it's
you could see the video. They did a great video on YouTube.
Oh, there is a video, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, look under Blitz Union, and the song is called Revolution. And
Okay.
I wrote the song feeling that today's generation needs their own revolution. Obviously, you know, the Beatles did Revolution in the 70s, and everybody had their revolution. But, you know, this is before the political bullshit that's going on today. But this is about corporations killing the planet with pollution, world leaders manipulating their people for their own agenda. It was very important for me, you know. I worked very hard on the lyrics, you know, and it was kind of cool using a dance beat, using a typical metal riff, and just putting all the whistles and bells and having a sing-songy chorus. But I felt it added more mystery when I used the vocalist. He would use his voice, and then I used what they call a trap vocal voice, the low voice, which is used in a lot of hip-hop music. So it kind of gave it that evilness going on.
Yeah. I think sometimes I get a lot of submissions every week at the station, of course, a lot of metal tracks and everything. And I find that sometimes they way overdo it. You know, it gets to the point where I call it like angry child, Cookie Monster sort of music. You know what I mean? But that had great taste, Steve. I have to admit, man, that had great taste because it was at the right freaking tone. It had that low, had that low evilness to it, but yet it wasn't coming off like somebody was just burping into the mic. You know what I mean?
They have the Cookie Monster vocals. I mean, you talk about Lamb of God, which I love, and you know, a lot of they call death metal. But I felt I wanted to make this more universal message because the band's from Prague, and you know, that was my hope. You know, the whole thing is when I work with artists, you know, I think it's very important that me as a producer and a writer, that I have to be in tune with what's going on today and tomorrow. What I did in the past is absolutely meaningless. I don't care about that. I'm not going to make an 80s record. And, you know, if I'm going to make a rock record, I want to make it a little fresher and different because, you know, I find a lot of bands will be stuck in the 80s and still do that shit. And come on.
Well, some of that stuff is coming back a little bit, but
it always tries to come back, but that's not me. I'd rather make something a little more contemporary with more meaning, and again, at the same time, be timeless. And to be able to, for the kids to get into it and the older people to get into it as well. I think it's important. But, you know, for anybody making music, understand who your audience is and make sure that you can attract that audience, and that's lyrically and whatever. That's what I do.
Well, on that subject, we were, we're dealing with a huge millennial society nowadays and stuff like that. And a while back, I saw you post something, and it just pissed me off totally. Where somebody had came out, you know, like with this whole, "Oh, wonderful, you've done that before, but what are you doing now? Are you relevant?" type of thing. And I know you got pissed off about. I got pissed, but as far as I'm concerned, I think you've made your position in life, and I think you just answered that fucking question, as far as I'm concerned, and laid it down to say that you have created some all-time endless songs that are going to be around for a very long time, and you're still doing it today. Definitely, your attitude's the same, and yeah, that's what it's all about. It's not about relevancy; is just about being able to do it over and over and over again. I think that you've accomplished that a great deal in the music industry.
Again, my philosophy's always been, if I can't make a difference, I'll be the first to get the hell out of the business, because I'm the world's biggest critic, and I never wanted to be locked in a generation of music. I mean, very proud of what I've done, but to me, everything I've done before is meaningless. What I do today, that's a totally new ball game, and that's how I treat stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, I would love to work with a band like Distress, because I know they just did a new album, which I'm kind of pissed off they didn't get a hold of me on. Well, Joe Elliott's a good friend of mine. I heard a song with them. I want to buy the record because I think it's going to be great. But bands like that, I even Imagine Dragons, or you can go down to a lot of these bands. Say, I would love to work with them because I would make their best record ever. I mean, that's how I feel. Even 21 Pilots and other bands,
I remember a while back you were working with an artist that worked with Prince for many years, Rosie Gaines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she had come out with an album a while back or whatever. Now, I think, again,
I worked with Prince on the Black album, and I went to Paisley Park to work on a track with Michael. And then I think I worked with Apollonia and who else? The girl who plays the guitar. What's her name? God, she's great.
The girl who plays guitar for Michael, or
no, for Prince. What was her name? Oh God.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. She was with him for years.
I'm having a brain fart. Very talented. It was her and some other girl I worked with.
It's okay. They'll forgive us when the time comes, Steve. Plus, I'm sure she's not even watching this. Well, wait a minute. We're on the internet. It might get caught. We're on YouTube and stuff.
Well, she's amazing. I can't believe I don't remember the name.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Anyways, I wanted to bring up another band that you've worked with in the past or whatever. I thought it was just a brilliant band, and God knows what happened to them. I know they're still around somewhere, and I'm waiting to find out if you're going to produce another album with them, because I know you produce pretty much all of their albums, and that is Blues Traveler.
I talk to John now and then. I would love to do another album of Blues Traveler. I mean, it was kind of interesting, how I got involved with Blues Traveler, because I was doing all this heavy rock stuff, just finished with Soundgarden and all these bands. And my manager, my partner says, hey, check out this band, Blues Traveler. And my first impression, well, this is a band that old Grateful Dead hippies would probably get into. And this is at the time when grunge was huge. Yeah. So, you know what? Let me go to one of their shows. And it blew me away. I went to one of the shows. It might have been Georgetown or DC or something like that. And the same people that were into Pearl Jam or Nirvana were at the show, and that blew me away. Then I got to work with them, and the talent of that band was so amazing. I mean, I was so blown away how great they were, what they did, the whole band. And working with John Papa, who is like a musical chameleon. I mean, this guy could pick up any instrument, never play it before, make sense of it. Yeah. And what I loved about John, obviously with his harp playing, they call him the Jimi Hendrix of harp players. Yeah. And it was kind of interesting the way how we would mic his harp. We would mic it through a Marshall stack, a Leslie, a distortion. I mean, everything just to get that vibe going on. And we did their recording up in Bearsville. We produced the album 4, which had run around and that won the Grammys Rock Record of the Year. And there was a song called Mountain Winds Again, which is one of my favorites that Bobby Sheehan, the bass player, wrote, which, God rest his soul, he passed away years ago. And I brought in Warren Haynes, and I believe, who's the keyboard player in the Stones? What's his name? Chuck Lavelle. We brought Martin Medeski. We brought some really cool people. I remember Dave Matthews was hanging out.
Yeah, and that's another band I love.
Yeah. And I remember when we were doing Mountain Winds Again, I wanted to do a guitar vibe, which is almost like Duane Allman. So we called up Warren Haynes. He came in. And I said, Warren, I says, you know what? I'm really looking for a slide part to go into that and do the solo. And he goes, well, I'm not feeling that, Steve. Let me just do a regular guitar. I said, no, you're doing slide. I would not compromise on that at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So begrudgingly, he does the slide, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But he was kind of like, okay, I really wanted to do this, but he let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time I saw Warren was at Bobby Sheen's funeral,
Mm-hmm.
and in Brooklyn, and they played Mountain Winds again.
Mm-hmm.
And Warren came to me and said, "Steve, I am so glad you insisted on me playing the slide guitar. I loved it." And that's probably one of the best compliments you can get. And again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be a dictator. I just knew what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked letting musicians be musicians. There's a story when I was working with Mick Jagger, and he had Jeff Beck, and he had probably all the best musicians in the world in. And I was working in one room, and he's working with Jeff in the other room. And Jeff came into my room, goes, Steve, this is pissing me off. I said, "What's up?" I said, "Mick is telling me what to play." I said, "Really?" So I had a conversation with Mick. I said, "Mick, you've hired the best musicians in the world. Why would you tell them what to play? If I were you, I would say, okay, here's 16 bars. Put your feeling into it and shut the fuck up." But Mick is a dictator, which I love. I think Mick's great.
Yeah.
And he's very talented. So it's hard to, question him. But when you hire a guy like Jeff Beck, you don't want to tell him what to play. You must get an average studio musician in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got it. It's not about ego or anything, but yeah, he did make it there on his own. You know what I mean? So,
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, man, that's crazy. Well, while we're on that subject or whatever, tell me what was probably one of the most memorable moments in all of your career or whatever, most memorable of all. As we were talking earlier, I was telling you about a gentleman by the name of Donald K. Donald here from Montreal, and he was with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards one time, and his wife said, "Are you hungry?" and wanted to hire a caterer, and all of a sudden Keith Richards puts on the apron, starts making tomato sauce or whatever, and it was one of the highlights of his moment. And I thought that would be the highlight of my moment too. But so tell me, what is your
I'll
biggest
give
rock and roll moment?
I'll give you a quick Mick moment. We were working in Manhattan, and Mick had a townhouse in Manhattan, and his protege, Tony King, which I know Tony for a long time, was, I don't know if he's like his assistant or like that.
Yeah.
Mick invited me to the townhouse, and he made breakfast for me, which I thought was pretty fucking cool. You know? And we worked in the studio, and then they had a surprise birthday party for Mick at the Palladium, the Michael Todd Room in Manhattan.
Okay, yeah.
And this is the time he was dating Jerry Hall. So this was the typical Andy Warhol party.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, I mean, Jerry Hall was about 6 to 8 months pregnant, wearing a white wedding dress.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in with Mick, and me and Mick came in late because we were working on a session. I'm sitting at the bar, and up comes Jack Nicholson. That's how I met Jack. So Mick introduces me to Jack. I said hi, and Mick goes to Jack. By the way, Steve has the best weed in the world. And have a joint with me. So we're smoking a joint at the bar because you can do anything you want. It was a private party.
Yeah.
And I was getting along great with Jack. Jack was hysterical. And that's the night I met Keith Richards for the first time. Him and Woody were in the bathroom doing their thing. Yeah. And I was working with Phantom Rocker and Slick. It was Earl Slick and Slim Jim and Lee Rocker from the Stray Cats put a band together. And I did a lot of work with Earl Slick in the 80s. In fact, I brought him in on so many projects, including I had him do all the guitars on Dancing in the Streets with Bowie Jagger. Yeah. So Earl Slick always wanted to be the Stones. He wanted to be Ron Wood. He never got the gig. So he knew I was working with Jagger. He said, "Hey, you think there's any way we get Keith to work on this record, do a solo?" I said, "Sure, let me talk to him." So I'm in the bathroom with Keith, and I introduced myself. I says, "We're doing this project. Would you mind coming in to do a little guitar work?" And he said, "Sure, no problem." So that's how that worked out. And the funny part of the story is he set everything up. And I had speakers in the main control in the main room where he's playing his guitar. And so I played the song in the record room, and I was saying, just take these 16 bars and do your thing. Keith did not want me to leave. He wanted me to play air guitar with him because he needed that motivation to get his part. I mean, I wish I had video at that time. It was hysterical. Here I am playing air guitar with Keith Richards for about 2 hours. It was hysterical, and I loved it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love the way that ended up, though, because, like I said, you know, the amount of interviews I've done and all the different stars I've had the chance to interview and stuff. When you ask them that one question, what's your greatest rock and roll moment? It always ends up with either there was this one time with Lemmy or the gentleman Andy Warhol.
Yeah, well,
you know,
Lemmy.
Yeah.
I knew Lemmy from the Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
Lemmy would come in at a certain hour, request a chicken soup, and play video games. That's he was playing these little video games at the Rainbow. That's how I knew Lemmy.
And that was back in the day of what, Atari or Nintendo?
Probably late 80s, early 90s, maybe.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of work in LA. For me to say what is my greatest moment, there was too many. I mean, everybody wants me to do a book and a movie, but which would probably make Almost Famous look like a joke. I mean, with everything I went through and what I did, people say, no way, that didn't happen. But obviously it's true, it did happen.
Well, I always tell my friends, the great part is we grew up in a generation of none of our shit was videotaped on YouTube, you know? But it's still, you know, it's back in the day, it is what it is, and you know, let bygones be bygones. Happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas, and that's just the way it's gonna be.
Yep.
So documentaries, who knows? Maybe you should just get together with Netflix and do it like Motley Crue did, and just do a movie like The Dirt where you leave out a lot of shit. You know what I mean, Steve?
I couldn't do that. No.
You had to.
This would be a movie that people would be blown away to see what exactly. Can you imagine growing up in New York around that time, from the 70s, 80s, LA, 90s, and all that? I was part of the Seattle scene as well during grunge. You know, it was like I remember when it turned to the 90s. You know, I was successful working with, like, you know, Guns N' Roses, Dawkins, Cinderella, Metallica, Alice Cooper.
Yeah,
all these bands.
And I've even seen pictures of you playing golf with Alice. He's an avid golf player, right?
Yeah, Alice is the one. I should say, right? He's the one who got me addicted to golf. When we worked on the Trash album. We could work 4 or 5 in the morning, be up at 5 or 6 in the morning, and play 18 holes. I loved it.
Yeah.
But, you know, be as it may, that it was interesting when the 90s came, grunge came in and alternative came in. And they look at Steve Thompson, oh, this is this 80s guy. What does he know? And I said, fuck you, I'll tell you what I know. I remember I went to, I worked with Soundgarden. We did the Loud and Love album. Then I went to Gary Gershon-Kaplan, and he gave me the Butthole Surfers. Yeah. I said, I want to do this album. And there was a song on there called Pepper, which I co-wrote, never got credit for it. Anyway, the album became the alternative album of the year. I have it all documented. Went platinum. It went through the roof. And the greatest moment was when David had it on David Letterman's show. And he goes, and here are the Butthole Surfers. And you couldn't make this up.
Oh my God!
So that was a big fuck you to all the people who think I'm an '80s guy.
Yeah. And
then in the '90s, I think I did a groundbreaking record with Korn, Follow Leader. Now you have to understand, at that time, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were dominating the charts. Rock was dead and buried. And I did that band. It blew. It actually knocked off NSYNC and Backstreet Boys off the pop charts. And then I started working with bands like Saliva. And then you had the Deftones come in. And then you had this hip-hop rock shit, which I loved. I mean, I worked on Bring On the Noise with Public Enemy and Anthrax. And I kind of like that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, definitely. I was talking earlier about Rob Halford and Judas Priest, and one of the greatest moments I got to a few was in Montreal. Judas Priest was playing. This was back in the 80s. And they had 2 bands lined up, Bon Jovi and Wasp. were backing them up at the time. And usually you never go in and see like they were just up and comers and stuff, Bon Jovi and Wasp and stuff at the time. And usually you never go see the backup bands too much because, you're busy outside smoking weed or doing whatever it is you're doing. And this guy comes running out in front of the old Forum in Montreal and goes, "Hey man, you got to come inside and see this shit," or whatever. You wouldn't believe what's happening. We packed our shit, went inside early, and Bon Jovi had hit the stage. And I swear, for a backup band, usually your stage is cut down and everything. They had that place rigged so heavy. And John Bon Jovi at that point was swinging from the rafters or whatever all around the crowd and just blowing everybody away. The show was spectacular. 2 weeks later, came back and headlined at the Forum. Sure. It was just 2 weeks before Slippery When Wet went platinum. And it was incredible. I said, this is rock and roll history right here, man. When you see a band like that, and then you got Wasp after it goes on, and then Judas Priest or whatever. Priest still put on a great show, but there was a moment where he's known to come out on his Harley Davidson, Rob, and he came out on a Honda. Spray painted all silver with microphones attached to the exhaust. Thought nobody would notice, but we're Montrealers and we notice everything. But story tells it that the reason why they came out on that is because their equipment and stuff was stuck at the airport in customs, so they weren't able to get the Harley on. Yeah.
You know what the ultimate opening act was, which to this day blows me away?
Yeah.
The Monkees were headlining and Jimi Hendrix was opening up for him.
There you go.
But as far as Montreal, I love Montreal. I spent some time there. I stayed at the Silver Hotel. Is that still there?
Yeah.
I love Montreal. And what's interesting? I've been to every Notre Dame from Paris, Montreal, and we have one about, of course, an hour from where I live.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Notre Dame it blows away Paris in Montreal. Absolutely. Blew me away.
It's been made to scale of the actual one in Paris, but a smaller miniature version. Yeah, it is. It's where Celine got married, eh?
I've been to one in Paris. When I was working with Duran on A View to a Kill, I spent time there, and I spent time in Notre Dame. Yeah. Montreal's Notre Dame is the most beautiful one I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, incredible.
Well, listen, I'm going to take off. Is there anything else?
No, man, that is it. I want just one last thing or whatever before you go. I want you, what type of advice can we give out? Because, of course, we support indie rock as big time and all sorts of indie musicians and stuff. What type of thing is it that you think they should be looking at? I mean, you've talked about things changing technically and stuff over the years, but what type of things should they be looking for? And when choosing a production or trying to compete in this big rock and roll world of ours?
For me, it always starts with a great song. I don't care what kind of music you're doing. I don't care what generation you're in. Mm-hmm. It's about a great song that hits people immediately. Yeah. Production is so manipulative, but you got to have a great song, great melody, great hook, and everything like that. Once you get that, you could do whatever. I mean, I know how many times, and again, I don't like to have to say, well, we got to rewrite this to make it better. That's the last thing I want to do, but I know if I can make a song better, I'm going to wind up rewriting it with them.
Yeah.
Or writing it myself if I have to.
Yeah.
But, as far as bands go, unfortunately, COVID, I noticed that a lot of people recording nowadays online, even, the chance of going to studio are nil. And I love working online. I could work with bands on my computer and go back and forth. And we get a lot of recording done. If we need to go in the studio, we can get it done once everything's cool, and it'll take a couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, you still produce, and a lot of people might be shocked at that or whatever, but you've worked with some large acts, but you do also still produce indie groups and stuff like that. And
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we're going to give out your website simply. And if you are an indie band and you're interested in getting in touch with Steve or whatever, and you want to send off a demo reel to him or whatever and see if he is the guy you want to work with, of course, definitely go to the following website. Steve, give it out.
It's SteveThompsonProductions.com. Real easy.
Real easy. And on there, of course, you'll find all the stuff that he's worked with, all the bands he's worked with, and definitely, I think the music speaks for itself. That's for sure. And Steve, we want to thank you very much for coming on by here on Indie Scene tonight. Once again, you are like family over here, and I missed you, man. Because when I got back into the radio game, I said definitely got to get Steve back on the air. I was in hiatus for about 6 years. Everybody thought I was under a rock or something. But look at this dumbass comes back and starts a radio station, right?
Oh,
what else? We can't get out of it. There's no way you're even going to ever leave this industry, Steve. It just hooks into us. And
well, I just love making new music. I mean, I said, I don't like living in the past, so I like living in the future. So
that's it. And well, that's it. It's a whole different ball game for me now. Before it might have been about like the show and this. Now it's a different thing when you own a station. Now it's about I want to bring up like all this new talent. I want to get these new DJs and these new acts and these new shows, and I want to help them, shine their light or whatever. I become like the Papa Bear, So, anyways, thanks again, Steve, from the bottom of my heart, man. It's always a pleasure to see you on the show here, and I guess we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this somewhere along the line because it's always great sitting back and having these conversations. Thank you once again for joining us here on Indie Scene.
Thank you, Phil, for everybody listening. God bless everyone, and have a great night.
Excellent. Okay, I'll be with you in a sec, Steve. I'm just going to shut off the show there, and there we go, folks. Steve Thompson, producer, and again, if you want to check out his website, it's www.stevethompsonproducer .com, stevethompsonproducer.com. And it's been a pleasure having you all here tonight, and we'll be back at you. Our next producers series, we'll have the great Kenny Lewis, who's the sound man and producer behind Striper. So looking to that interview. We'll get back to you as soon as we can on Facebook about that. And till then, make sure you tune into Indie Scene every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on IndieRockRadio.ca. Thanks a lot. God bless. Keep it safe, and we'll talk to you soon.